You're not gonna believe what just happened to me. So I recently moved into this quiet little neighborhood, thinking it'd be a peaceful place to settle down. But it didn't take long before I met Her asterisk, the neighborhood's self-appointed rule enforcer, who everyone secretly calls HOA Karen. At first, it was little things. Notes on my door, complaints about my grass being half an inch too long. But then it escalated, fast. One morning, I noticed something weird tucked up under the eaves of my porch. At first, I thought it was a bird's nest. Nope, it was a tiny camera. Then I found another one, pointing straight at my backyard. That's when it hit me. She was watching me, recording, monitoring my every move on my own property. I was shocked. Who even does that? I confronted her, and what she said was wild. She claimed it was for community safety and that I was being closely observed for violations. Yeah, seriously. That's when I knew something had to be done. I started documenting everything and let's just say, she definitely didn't see what was coming next. But here's where it gets crazy. What I discovered after digging a little deeper turned this into more than just a neighbor dispute. You won't believe how it all unraveled. I wasn't about to let her get away with this. I mean, who puts cameras on someone else's property without their permission? I started doing some digging, and the more I learned about this HOA Karen, the more I realized this wasn't just some random neighborhood watchdog. Turns out she'd been the self-appointed leader of the HOA for years. And over that time, she built up a reputation for crossing the line, constantly pushing her own agenda, and getting too involved in everyone's business. But the spy cameras, this was next level. I spent hours checking the footage from my security cameras and realized something even more disturbing. Karen wasn't just spying on me, she'd been watching others too. The more I looked into her past actions, the more I uncovered about her shady behavior. It wasn't just about lawn rules or fence heights, she had been trying to control everything. I decided it was time to confront her in person. I couldn't let her get away with this invasion of privacy. But when I showed up at her house, she was gone. All the windows were closed, and there was an eerie silence around the place. The only thing left behind was a weird feeling in the air, like I was being watched from somewhere. I had no idea what I was about to discover next. I never could have imagined how much this would spiral. After Karen's house was mysteriously empty, I started to feel like something much bigger was going on. I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just some overzealous HOA member. She had to be involved in something more serious. But what? I reached out to a couple of neighbors who'd lived here longer than I had, hoping they might know something. That's when I got a few more strange pieces of the puzzle. One neighbor, an older guy named Jim, had lived here for decades. He told me Karen had been acting different lately, almost like she was getting more paranoid, more obsessed with everything. But it wasn't until he mentioned that she'd been secretly making changes to the HOA bylaws that things really started clicking. Apparently, she'd been pushing to make the rules stricter, and rumor was she was collecting dirt on residents to force them into compliance. This was starting to feel less like a petty neighbor dispute and more like a full-blown power trip. Then I got a call from a local law enforcement friend of mine. He had heard about the cameras, and apparently it wasn't the first time she'd done something like this. It turns out Karen had a history of crossing legal lines to keep her grip on the neighborhood. But here's the kicker. Karen's sudden disappearance wasn't an accident. I decided to go back to her house, hoping to find something, anything, that could explain all this. What I found in her backyard, hidden under some old crates, would change everything. But what it meant, I still wasn't sure. I just knew I was way deeper in this than I'd ever expected. The more I looked into Karen's background, the more things didn't add up. I spent hours at her house, trying to piece together every odd detail. When I found that stash of old crates in her backyard, my heart raced. Inside them were stacks of papers, most of them legal documents, but what really caught my attention was a thick binder labeled surveillance reports. It was filled with detailed notes on every resident in the neighborhood. Asterisk myself included asterisk. Karen had been compiling a secret file on all of us. It was more than just watching. She had been monitoring us like we were suspects in a crime. The deeper I dug, the more disturbing it got. Some of the reports included personal details, things that could only have come from spying on our private lives. I couldn't believe it. Had she been trying to blackmail us into submission? What was she planning to do with all this information? I knew I needed help, so I called my law enforcement friend again. He sounded shocked when I explained what I'd found. He told me I needed to get out of there immediately and not to confront her. The thing is, I wasn't about to back down. Not after everything she'd done. I felt a sense of urgency, like I was getting close to something big. And just as I was about to leave her property, I heard a noise. A door creaking open, footsteps in the distance. My blood ran cold. Someone was coming, and I had a feeling it wasn't just Karen. The footsteps grew louder, and I froze, hidden behind a stack of crates, heart pounding in my chest. I barely breathed, trying to stay out of sight. The last thing I needed was to be caught snooping around Karen's property, especially after everything I'd already uncovered. But as the sound got closer, I could hear it wasn't just one person. It sounded like multiple people, and they were heading right toward me. I peeked through the slats of the crates, just enough to see what was happening. To my shock, it wasn't just Karen coming toward me. It was a group of people I didn't recognize. They were dressed in dark clothing, all moving with purpose, almost like a team. I barely had time to process it before one of them glanced my way. My heart skipped a beat. I was so close to being spotted. I held my breath, praying they wouldn't notice me. Then, just as I was about to pull back, I heard a voice I did recognize. It was Jim, the neighbor. But he wasn't alone. He was walking alongside the group. I couldn't believe it. Jim, the guy who had warned me about Karen's odd behavior, was now clearly in on whatever was happening. This didn't make sense. Was he working with her? Had I been wrong about everything? The group continued toward the back of the house, and I had no idea what they were up to. Were they here to remove the evidence? Or worse, were they planning to make sure I didn't leave with the truth? My gut told me I was in way over my head now. This wasn't just about Karen anymore. There was something much darker going on. Something bigger than I ever expected. I had to act fast, but with each passing second, the danger felt more real. Would I make it out of here before they found me? Or had I walked right into a trap I couldn't escape from? As the group got closer, my mind raced. I had to make a choice. Stay hidden or make a break for it. I chose the latter. Quietly, I crawled behind the crates, trying to get to the side gate. I had no idea what they were doing or how deep this conspiracy went, but I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait to be caught. My heart hammered in my chest as I reached the gate and slowly pushed it open. But just as I was about to slip through, I heard footsteps behind me. A hand grabbed my shoulder, spinning me around. My breath caught in my throat. It was Jim. His face was completely different now. There was no trace of the friendly neighbor I'd once trusted. His eyes were cold, calculating. "You should have stayed away," he said, his voice low and tense. This was never meant to go this far. Now, it's too late. I didn't know what he meant, but before I could react, I heard another voice. It was Karen. She emerged from the shadows, and I couldn't believe what I saw. She wasn't alone either. There were more people, more than I could count. They all looked at me with a kind of steely determination, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about her. She had been building something bigger than a neighborhood HOA. She had been running a full-blown surveillance operation. "I warned you, didn't I?" Karen said, her tone smug. "You don't mess with me. I've got eyes everywhere." But just as I was preparing for whatever was about to happen, something even more shocking occurred. A police siren blared in the distance, getting louder by the second. The sound of cars skidding to a halt, then the voices of officers shouting commands. It was like something out of a movie. The people surrounding me panicked. Jim cursed, and Karen's confident expression faltered. How did they? She started, but before she could finish, several officers swarmed the yard, pulling everyone into handcuffs. It all happened so fast, I couldn't keep up with it. Turns out, one of the neighbors I had spoken to earlier had tipped off the authorities. The whole operation Karen had been running was part of a larger network of illegal surveillance, and Jim, he wasn't just another neighbor, he had been helping her cover up some very serious crimes. It felt like the ground had been ripped from under me. But as I watched Karen and the others being led away in handcuffs, I couldn't shake one last question. Who else was involved? The officers didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew the truth was bigger than I had realized. As the authorities took Karen and the others away, I finally felt a wave of relief wash over me, but there was still so much I didn't know. The police assured me they were going to continue investigating the full extent of the illegal surveillance network Karen had been running, and they were digging into how far it spread. It was clear now that she hadn't just been spying on us for petty HOA violations. This was about power, control, and manipulating people for her own gain. I learned later that Jim had been working with her for years, using his position as a trusted neighbor to keep everything under wraps. Once the authorities got involved, they uncovered evidence of widespread data collection and illegal monitoring, not just in our neighborhood, but in several others as well. What started as a simple HOA dispute had turned into a major investigation into privacy violations. In the end, Karen's reign of terror was over, but it left me with a bitter taste. Trust was shattered, not just with her, but with the community I'd thought was so peaceful. As I looked back on everything that had happened, I realized that sometimes the most dangerous people hide in plain sight. But now, at least we knew the truth, and that was something I could finally stand on.